The phone screen glowed in the darkness of the bedroom, casting blue light across Naomi's face as she read words that shattered her world into pieces she didn't know could be reassembled. Derek's phone, which had buzzed repeatedly on the nightstand, now revealed text messages that turned her stomach and made her hands shake. "One more year of playing husband, then I'll file and walk away with $175 million. She'll never see it coming. The prenup expired after 10 years and we just hit year 12. Perfect timing, baby." The response from someone named Simone made it worse. "I can't wait. We've earned this. You've put up with her workaholic attitude long enough. Soon we'll be together and rich." Naomi sat on the edge of the bed in her blue silk pajamas, her brown skin looking gray in the phone's light. Her husband of 12 years slept peacefully next to her, his chest rising and falling with the easy rhythm of someone without guilt or worry. She wanted to scream. She wanted to throw the phone at his head. She wanted to shake him awake and demand answers. But she did none of those things. Instead, she carefully placed the phone back on the nightstand, exactly where Derek had left it. She stood slowly, her legs feeling weak, and walked to the bathroom. She closed the door silently, turned on the light, and looked at herself in the mirror. Naomi Bennett, 38 years old, founder and CEO of TechBridge Solutions, a software company worth $350 million. She had built that company from nothing. 15 years ago, she had been coding in her mother's basement, surviving on ramen noodles and coffee. She had worked 80-hour weeks, missed birthdays and holidays, pitched to hundreds of investors who told her no. And now her husband, the man she had supported through his failed business ventures, the man who had convinced her that love meant sharing everything, was planning to take half of what she had built. She scrolled back through the messages on Derek's phone, which she had brought into the bathroom. There were hundreds of them. The affair had been going on for 2 years. 2 years of lies, of business trips that weren't business trips, of late nights at the gym that were actually late nights in hotel rooms. But worse than the affair were the calculated messages about her money. "My attorney says California is a community property state. Doesn't matter that she built the company before we met. Once we married, I became entitled to half of everything earned during the marriage. And since the company's value exploded in the last 5 years, that's all mine to claim." Another message from 3 months ago. "I've been documenting everything. Making sure I'm the supportive husband, attending her company events, playing the perfect partner. The judge will see I contributed to her success by being there for her." Naomi felt bile rise in her throat. Every kind gesture, every supportive comment, every time he had said he was proud of her in the past year, it had all been an act. A performance designed to strengthen his legal case. She read further back. Derek had been planning this for over a year. He had consulted with 3 different divorce attorneys, getting opinions on how to maximize his payout. He had researched which judges were most generous to non-working spouses. He had even documented times when Naomi worked late, framing it as neglect, building his case that he deserved compensation for enduring a marriage to someone focused on her career. The messages with Simone painted a picture of a future they had planned together. A house in Malibu. A yacht. First-class travel to Europe, Asia, Australia. They had even joked about Naomi continuing to run the company while they enjoyed her money. "Let her keep working," Derek had written. "She loves that company more than anything. We'll be on a beach somewhere while she slaves away at her computer." Naomi's hands stopped shaking. A strange calm settled over her as she read the last few messages. The most recent one, sent just hours ago while she had been asleep, said, "One more year, babe. Just 12 more months of pretending and then we're free. And rich." She put the phone down and looked at herself in the mirror again. Her reflection looked different now. Harder. More focused. She was not going to cry. She was not going to confront him. She was not going to give him the satisfaction of seeing her hurt. Naomi Bennett had not built a $350 million company by being naive or weak. She had survived in a tech industry that tried to push women, especially black women, out at every turn. She had negotiated with venture capitalists who underestimated her. She had competed against companies with 10 times her resources. And she had won. This situation was just another problem to solve. Another challenge to overcome. Derek thought he was smart, planning his exit strategy for a year. But Naomi had built her entire life on being smarter than people who underestimated her. She turned off the bathroom light and went back to bed. Derek stirred slightly but didn't wake. Naomi lay on her back, staring at the ceiling, her mind already working through possibilities. California was a community property state. Derek was right about that. But community property only applied to assets that existed and were owned by the parties getting divorced. There were legal ways to protect assets. family trust, gifts, transfers. Her mother, Patricia, had been trying to get Naomi to set up better asset protection for years. Naomi had always been too busy, too trusting, too focused on building her company to worry about protecting it. That was about to change. Derek shifted in bed, moving closer to her. His arm draped across her waist, the same gesture he had made thousands of times before. But now it felt like a snake coiling around its prey. "Love you," he mumbled in his sleep. Naomi stared at the ceiling and said nothing. The clock on the nightstand read 3:47 a.m. In a few hours, Derek would wake up, kiss her goodbye, and head to the gym where he would probably meet Simone. He would come home later, shower, and tell Naomi about his day, all while planning to destroy her financially. But what Derek didn't know, what he couldn't possibly anticipate, was that Naomi had just become his opponent in a game he didn't even realize had started. She had built a company against impossible odds. She had outmaneuvered competitors with more money and more connections. She had turned nothing into hundreds of millions of dollars through intelligence, strategy, and sheer determination. Derek thought he was going to take half of that in a year. Naomi closed her eyes, her mind already formulating a plan. Derek had given her a gift by waiting one more year. He thought the delay would strengthen his case, would allow him to document more evidence of being a supportive spouse. But that year would be his downfall. Because Naomi Bennett was about to show her cheating husband what happened when you tried to steal from someone who had fought for every single thing she had ever earned. The game had begun. And Derek had no idea he had already lost. Naomi sat in a small coffee shop 3 blocks from her office, wearing a green blazer and dark jeans. Across from her sat Gerald Price, a private investigator her attorney had recommended. Gerald was 52, with gray hair and tired eyes that had seen too much of humanity's worst behavior. "I need to know everything," Naomi said quietly. "Every detail of the affair. Every meeting with attorneys. Every plan he's made. Can you do that?" Gerald pulled out a tablet and stylus. "Mrs. Bennett, I've been doing this for 23 years. If your husband is planning something, I'll find out what it is. But I need to be clear about expectations. This will take time, probably several weeks. And what I find might be painful to hear." "I've already read his text messages," Naomi said. "I know about the affair. I know about his plans to divorce me and take half my assets. What I need from you is evidence that will hold up legally. I need documentation. Photographs. Recordings if possible. Everything that proves what he's doing." Gerald nodded slowly. "Okay. Tell me everything you know so far." Naomi spent the next hour explaining what she had discovered. The text messages with Simone Rodriguez. The consultations with divorce attorneys. Derek's timeline of one more year before filing. Gerald took notes, asking questions, building a profile. "This Simone Rodriguez," Gerald said. "What do you know about her?" "Nothing," Naomi admitted. "Just her name from the text. Derek told me he's been going to the gym 5 days a week. I assume that's where they met." "Which gym?" "Elite Fitness on Westwood Boulevard. He's been a member there for 3 years. Gerald made a note. "I'll start there. Does your husband have a regular schedule?" "He leaves the house at 9 every morning. Usually goes to the gym from 9:30 to 11. Then he either comes home or meets friends for lunch. He tells me he's working on a new business venture, but I haven't seen any actual work." "What kind of venture?" "He says he's consulting for fitness companies, helping them with their marketing and business development. But I've never seen contracts, never seen income from it. I've been supporting us both for the past 8 years. Gerald leaned back in his chair. "Mrs. Bennett, can I speak honestly with you?" "Please do. I've handled hundreds of these cases. Cheating spouses, hidden assets, fraud. What your husband is doing is particularly calculated. He's not just having an affair. He's running a long-term operation designed to maximize his financial gain from divorcing you. That takes a special kind of mindset." "I know," Naomi said. "The question is, what do you want to do with the information I gather? Are you looking to divorce him first? Are you trying to get evidence for a fault-based divorce? Or is there something else?" Naomi had been thinking about this for the 3 days since she discovered Derek's texts. She had barely slept, her mind racing through scenarios and strategies. "I want to protect my assets," she said carefully. "I built my company before I met Derek. I've worked 16-hour days for 15 years to get where I am. He's contributed nothing except spending my money. I will not let him take half of what I've earned. California community property law is clear," Gerald said. "Anything earned during the marriage is split 50-50, regardless of who earned it." "I know the law," Naomi replied. But there are legal ways to protect assets. Family trusts, gifts to relatives, business restructuring. My attorney is looking into options. What I need from you is a complete picture of what Derek is planning, so we can stay ahead of him. Gerald smiled slightly. You're thinking strategically. That's good. Most people in your situation react emotionally. They confront their spouse, file for divorce immediately, and then try to sort out the finances later. By then it's too late. I didn't build a $350 million company by being impulsive, Naomi said. Over the next 2 weeks, Gerald worked. He followed Derek to the gym, to restaurants, to a condo in Santa Monica that belonged to Simone Rodriguez. He took photographs of Derek and Simone together, kissing in parking lots, holding hands on the beach, entering and leaving the condo at all hours. He documented Derek's meetings with Frank Torres, a divorce attorney known for aggressive tactics in high-asset cases. Gerald couldn't record the conversations, but he noted the dates, times, and locations of every meeting. He interviewed people at Elite Fitness, posing as a potential member. He learned that Simone was a personal trainer at the gym, and that she and Derek had been openly affectionate for over a year. Several gym members assumed they were married. The final report Gerald delivered to Naomi was 300 pages long. It included photographs, timelines, financial records showing Derek spending on gifts for Simone, and evidence of 8 separate consultations with divorce attorneys over the past 14 months. Naomi read the report in her office late one evening, her door closed, her phone silenced. Each page confirmed what she already knew, but seeing it all laid out in detail made it real in a way the text messages hadn't. Derek had spent $40,000 on gifts for Simone. Jewelry, clothes, a weekend trip to Cabo San Lucas. All charged to credit cards that Naomi paid off each month without looking at the details. He had test-driven luxury cars, telling the dealers he would be buying one soon as a business deal closed. The business deal was his divorce from Naomi. He had looked at houses with Simone, talking to real estate agents about properties in the $2 to $5 million range. When agents asked about financing, Derek had smiled and said, "I'm about to come into some money." A lot of money? The most damning evidence was a recorded conversation Gerald had captured with a high-powered microphone from outside Frank Torres's office window. Derek's voice was clear. "I need to maximize the payout. She's worth $350 million. I want half. What do I need to do to make sure I get it?" Frank Torres had responded with advice. Stay in the marriage at least one more year to get past the 10-year mark, which made Derek look more committed. Document Naomi's long work hours and frequent travel, building a case that she neglected the marriage. Attend all of her company events to show he supported her career. Be affectionate in public so friends and family would be surprised by the divorce and sympathetic to Derek. Play the long game, Frank Torres had said. Make her think everything is fine. Then hit her hard and fast with the divorce papers. By the time she realizes what's happening, it will be too late to hide assets or change anything. Naomi closed the report and sat in silence. Derek thought he was playing the long game. He thought he was being strategic. But he had no idea that Naomi had found out about his plan with 1 year still remaining on his timeline. He had no idea that while he was documenting her work hours and attending her company events, she was building a case of her own. Gerald had given her everything she needed. Now it was time to talk to her mother and her attorney. It was time to make Derek's victory impossible. Patricia Bennett's house in Pasadena was exactly as Naomi remembered from childhood. Neat, organized, filled with books and African art. Patricia had been a successful businesswoman herself, running an import company for 30 years before retiring at 60. She had taught Naomi everything about business, about strategy, about never letting anyone take advantage of you. Naomi sat at her mother's kitchen table, drinking tea from a red ceramic mug. Patricia sat across from her, reading Gerald's investigation report with a calm expression that never changed, even when she reached the pages with photographs of Derek and Simone together. When Patricia finally closed the report, she looked at her daughter and said, "I never liked him." Despite everything, Naomi almost laughed. "You never said anything. You were in love. Or you thought you were. What good would it have done for me to tell you I thought Derek was a user? You would have defended him. People always defend the ones who hurt them until they can't anymore." "You were right about him," Naomi said quietly. "I usually am," Patricia replied without arrogance, just fact. "The question now is what you're going to do about it." "I want to protect my assets. I want to make sure Derek gets nothing when he files for divorce next year." Patricia nodded. "Candace Mitchell is coming over in an hour. She's the best family law attorney in California. I've already spoken with her and given her an overview of the situation. She'll have options for us. Options. Naomi, you built a $350 million company. That kind of wealth needs protection regardless of marriage problems. There are trusts, foundations, business structures that can shield assets from divorce proceedings. We should have set these up years ago, but better late than never. Is it legal? Naomi asked. I don't want to do anything that will come back to hurt me in court. Everything will be completely legal, Patricia assured her. We're not hiding assets. We're not committing fraud. We're simply restructuring your holdings in a way that protects them, which is smart business practice that any wealthy person should do. An hour later, Candace Mitchell arrived. She was 45, black, with short natural hair and an air of absolute competence. She wore a maroon suit and carried a leather briefcase that she set on Patricia's dining room table. Naomi, Candace said, shaking her hand, your mother has told me about your situation. I've reviewed the investigation report. Before we discuss solutions, I need to understand your goals. What do you want the end result to be? Naomi had thought about this question for days. I want Derek to get nothing. Not $1 of what I've built. I want him to file for divorce thinking he's going to get rich, and I want him to walk away with exactly what he brought into this marriage, which is nothing. Candace smiled. That's clear. Good. Clarity makes my job easier. Now here's the situation legally. California is a community property state. Generally, any assets acquired during marriage are split 50-50. However, there are exceptions and strategies we can use. She pulled documents from her briefcase and spread them on the table. First, we need to establish what assets you currently own personally versus what the company owns. Your company, TechBridge Solutions, is privately held. You own 100% of the shares. Is that correct? Yes, Naomi confirmed. Who else is on the board of directors? Me, my CFO Timothy Green, and 2 independent directors that investors required when we took funding 8 years ago. And Derek has no official role in the company? None. He's never worked for TechBridge. He has no equity, no title, nothing. Good. That helps. Now here's what we're going to do. We're going to create a family trust with your mother as the primary beneficiary and trustee. You will gift your shares of TechBridge Solutions to this trust. We'll also transfer your personal real estate holdings, investment accounts, and other significant assets into the trust. Naomi frowned. Won't that look suspicious? Won't a judge see through that? Not if we do it correctly, Candace explained. Family trusts are common estate planning tools. Wealthy people use them all the time for legitimate purposes. Asset protection, tax planning, estate distribution. The key is that we're not doing this in response to divorce proceedings. We're doing it now, a year before Derek even files. We're going to document that this is part of your long-term financial planning, which it should have been anyway. Patricia leaned forward. Candace and I discussed this already. I'll be the trustee of the family trust. The assets will legally belong to the trust, with me controlling them. You'll be a beneficiary, which means you can still benefit from the assets, but you won't personally own them anymore. And that's legal? Completely, Candace said. People transfer assets to family members all the time. As long as we're not doing it to defraud creditors or break any laws, it's perfectly acceptable. And here's the important part. Once Derek files for divorce, the court will ask for a complete accounting of marital assets. At that point, you'll truthfully declare that you don't own TechBridge Solutions anymore. You don't own the properties. The assets belong to the family trust, which is a separate legal entity. What about the timing? Naomi asked. If Derek finds out I'm moving assets before he files for divorce, won't his attorney argue that I did it specifically to avoid community property laws? That's why we need to do this carefully, Candace replied. We'll document everything as standard estate planning. We'll have appraisals done showing the current value of assets. We'll file all the proper tax forms for the gifts. We'll make this look like what it is, a daughter working with her mother to set up proper wealth protection structures that should have been in place years ago. How long will this take? Naomi asked. 6 to 8 months for everything to be completed and properly documented. Maybe a bit longer if we hit any complications. But once it's done, your assets will be protected. Naomi sat back in her chair, thinking through the implications. So when Derek files for divorce next year, thinking he's going to get half of my fortune, he'll find out there's nothing to take. Exactly, Candace said. He'll have wasted 2 years having an affair and planning a divorce that will leave him with nothing. What about income? Naomi asked. I still earn a salary from TechBridge. Would he be entitled to part of that? You won't own TechBridge anymore, remember? The trust will. We'll restructure things so you're an employee of the company, earning a reasonable salary for your work as CEO. Any income you earn after the trust is established will be your separate property, not marital property, because it comes from work you do for an entity you don't own. Patricia smiled. Derek thinks he's been so clever planning this for a year. He has no idea that his wife is smarter than he'll ever be. There's one more thing we need to discuss, Candace said seriously. Naomi, you're going to have to keep living with Derek and acting normal while we do all of this. That's going to be extremely difficult emotionally. You'll have to pretend you don't know about the affair or his plans. Can you do that? Naomi thought about the years she had spent building her company. The times investors had told her no and she had smiled and thanked them anyway. The times competitors had tried to steal her ideas and she had outworked them instead of complaining. The times she had been exhausted, stressed and ready to quit, but had kept going because giving up was not an option. Yes, she said firmly. I can do that. It might take 8 months, Candace reminded her. 8 months of living with someone you know is betraying you. He's been betraying me for 2 years, Naomi replied. I can handle 8 more months if it means he gets nothing. Patricia reached across the table and squeezed her daughter's hand. You're strong. You're smart. And you're going to win this. Candace began organizing the documents. I'll start the paperwork this week. We'll set up the trust, begin the appraisals, and start the transfer process. Naomi, you'll need to sign a lot of documents over the next few months. We'll do it discreetly at my office or here at Patricia's house. Never at your home where Derek might see something. Understood, Naomi said. One last piece of advice, Candace added. Don't change your behavior toward Derek at all. Don't be nicer or meaner. Don't spend more time at home or less. Don't change anything. We want him to continue thinking his plan is working perfectly. The more confident he is, the bigger the shock will be when he realizes he's getting nothing. As Naomi drove home that evening, she felt something she hadn't felt since discovering Derek's texts. She felt hope. She felt powerful. She felt like herself again. Derek thought he was playing a game. But he had chosen the wrong opponent. Naomi Bennett had spent her entire life winning against people who underestimated her. Her cheating husband was about to learn that lesson the hard way. The next 8 months were the hardest of Naomi's life, and that was saying something considering she had built a multi-million-dollar company from nothing. Every morning she woke up next to Derek. Every morning he kissed her goodbye before heading to the gym where he would meet Simone. Every evening he came home and asked about her day, played the role of supportive husband, all while counting down the months until he could file for divorce and claim half her fortune. And every single day, Naomi pretended she didn't know any of it. She attended company events with Derek at her side, watching him smile and shake hands with her employees and investors, playing the proud husband. She listened to him talk about his consulting business that didn't exist. She paid the credit card bills that funded his affair without saying a word about the expensive dinners and hotel rooms. At night, she lay awake while he slept, her mind racing through the asset transfer process, checking and rechecking that everything was being done correctly. The family trust was established in the second month. Patricia became the official trustee of the Bennett Family Trust, a legal entity designed for estate planning and asset protection. Candace had done everything perfectly, documenting the trust's purpose as long-term wealth preservation and family legacy planning. The asset transfers began in month 3. First, Naomi's shares in TechBridge Solutions. 100% of the company stock was gifted to the Bennett Family Trust. Appraisers valued the company at $352 million. The gift was properly reported to the IRS. Everything was legal and documented. Then came the real estate. Naomi owned 4 properties: the house in Beverly Hills where she and Derek lived, a condo in San Francisco, a vacation home in Lake Tahoe, and a small apartment building in downtown Los Angeles that she had purchased as an investment. All of them were transferred to the trust. Her investment portfolio, worth another $38 million, was moved into trust accounts. Her personal bank accounts, except for one checking account with $50,000 that she kept for daily expenses, were transferred. Every single transfer was documented, appraised, and reported properly. Candace was meticulous. If Derek's attorney tried to claim fraud or hiding of assets, there would be a paper trail showing that everything was done legally and transparently. But the transfers had to be done quietly. Documents were signed at Candace's office or at Patricia's house. Nothing was mailed to Naomi's home. No phone calls about the transfers happened anywhere Derek might overhear. And through it all, Naomi had to act normal. She attended a charity gala in month 4, wearing a stunning red dress, Derek in a navy suit beside her. They posed for photographs together, Derek's arm around her waist. People commented on what a beautiful couple they made. Naomi smiled for the cameras and wanted to scream. That same week, Gerald's continued surveillance showed Derek and Simone looking at engagement rings. They were planning their future with Naomi's money before the divorce had even been filed. In month 5, Derek became even more affectionate. He brought flowers home, suggested date nights, told Naomi how much he loved her. Candace had predicted this. Derek was documenting his role as a caring spouse, building evidence for his divorce case. "How was your day?" he would ask every evening, his voice full of fake concern. "Busy," Naomi would reply, keeping her answers short because she didn't trust herself to say more without the truth spilling out. "You work too hard," Derek would say, shaking his head. "You need to slow down and enjoy life more." What he really meant was that she should keep working so there would be more money for him to take. Naomi knew this and she played along, nodding and promising to take more vacation time. TechBridge Solutions had a major product launch in month 6. It was the biggest release in the company's history, a new software platform that analysts predicted would double the company's revenue. Naomi worked 16-hour days for 3 weeks straight preparing for the launch. Derek complained, gently at first, then more insistently. "You're never home. I feel like I barely see you." He was documenting her absence, building his case of marital neglect. Naomi knew this and she still couldn't help snapping at him. "This launch is important. You know how much work it takes." "I know," Derek said, his voice soft and understanding. "I just miss you." The words made her sick because she knew they were lies. But the launch was successful. The software platform exceeded projections. TechBridge Solutions' value jumped to $400 million practically overnight. Except Naomi no longer owned TechBridge Solutions. The Bennett family trust did. Every share had been transferred 5 months earlier. Derek had no idea that the company he was planning to take half of was no longer in Naomi's name. In month 7, Simone showed up at one of Naomi's company events. It was a cocktail reception for investors and board members, held at a hotel in downtown Los Angeles. Naomi wore a bright blue dress, her natural hair styled in elegant curls. Derek had arrived with her, playing his role. And then, an hour into the event, Naomi saw Simone across the room. She was younger than Naomi had expected from the photographs, maybe 32 or 33. Pretty with long dark hair and an athletic build. She wore a green dress that was too casual for the event, and she looked uncomfortable among the business executives and investors. Naomi watched Derek's face when he noticed Simone. For just a second, panic flashed across his features. Then he recovered, smiling and excusing himself to get a drink. Naomi tracked him through the crowd. He met Simone near the bar, their conversation quick and tense. Derek's body language was clear. "What are you doing here?" Simone looked upset. They argued in whispers, trying not to draw attention. Naomi felt a cold satisfaction. Derek was realizing that juggling a wife and a mistress at the same event was harder than he had planned. After 5 minutes, Simone left. Derek returned to Naomi's side, his smile back in place, acting as if nothing had happened. "Everything okay?" Naomi asked innocently. "Fine," Derek said. "Just needed some air." "Liar." The word echoed in Naomi's head, but she kept her face neutral and turned her attention back to her guests. Month 8 arrived and Candace confirmed that all asset transfers were complete. Everything Naomi had built, everything she owned, was now legally held by the Bennett family trust with Patricia as trustee. On paper, Naomi Bennett owned almost nothing. A checking account with $43,000. Her personal car. Some jewelry and clothes. That was it. The house they lived in belonged to the trust. TechBridge Solutions belonged to the trust. The vacation properties, the investment accounts, all of it belonged to the trust. Derek had no idea. He continued his countdown, sending texts to Simone that Gerald intercepted. 4 more months, baby. Then we're free. Naomi attended a family dinner at Patricia's house in early month 9. It was just the two of them eating chicken and rice at the kitchen table like they had done 1,000 times before. "How are you holding up?" Patricia asked. "I'm tired," Naomi admitted. "Tired of pretending. Tired of lying next to him at night. Tired of acting like everything is fine when I know what he's planning." "It's almost over," Patricia reminded her. "Once he files for divorce, the truth comes out. And he gets nothing." "I want to see his face," Naomi said quietly. "When he realizes his plan failed. When he understands that he wasted 2 years of his life for nothing. I want to be there when it all falls apart for him." Patricia smiled. "You will be." and it will be worth every difficult moment you've endured. That night, Naomi went home to the house that was no longer legally hers, climbed into bed next to the husband who was betraying her, and closed her eyes. 3 more months, she told herself. 3 more months of performance. Then Derek would make his move, and Naomi would finally get to watch his entire scheme collapse. The thought made her smile in the darkness. Soon, Derek would learn the most expensive lesson of his life. You don't steal from someone smarter than you. You don't betray someone who has built an empire from nothing. And you definitely don't underestimate Naomi Bennett. The final asset transfer was completed on a Tuesday morning in November. Naomi sat in Candace Mitchell's office, signing the last of what felt like 1,000 documents. Her hand cramped from writing her signature so many times, but each signature represented another piece of her fortune protected from Derek's grasp. Candace reviewed the final paperwork with meticulous attention to detail. She wore a blue suit today, her natural hair pulled back in a neat bun. Spread across her desk were folders representing 18 months of careful legal work. This is the last one, Candace said, sliding a document across the desk. Transfer of the investment property on 5th Street to the Bennett Family Trust. Once you sign this, everything is complete. Naomi signed her name, then set down the pen and flexed her fingers. How do you feel? Candace asked. Like I've been holding my breath for 8 months and can finally exhale, Naomi replied honestly. Candace smiled. Let me walk you through where everything stands. The Bennett Family Trust now holds all of the following assets. She pulled up a document on her computer and turned the screen so Naomi could see. TechBridge Solutions, 100% of company stock. Current valuation, $403 million. The increase in value since we started this process doesn't matter because the entire company was already transferred to the trust before the value increase occurred. 4 residential properties. The Beverly Hills house, the San Francisco condo, the Lake Tahoe vacation home, and the 5th Street apartment building. Combined value, $22 million. Investment portfolio including stocks, bonds, and mutual funds. Value, $42 million. Various business assets, equipment, and intellectual property. Value, $8 million. Total assets in the Bennett Family Trust, $475 million. Naomi stared at the numbers. She had known roughly what her net worth was, but seeing it all listed like this was staggering. She had built this. Every dollar represented hours of work, sleepless nights, risks taken, decisions made. And Derek had thought he could take half of it just for being married to her. What about my personal assets? Naomi asked. What do I still own in my own name? Candace pulled up another document. Your personal checking account, currently holding $38,000. Your car, a 2024 Mercedes SUV, valued at $90,000. Personal items including jewelry, clothes, and furniture, estimated value of perhaps $100,000. That's it. Your total personal net worth is approximately $228,000. And that's what Derek will try to split in the divorce, Naomi said. Exactly. California community property law says he's entitled to half of marital assets. Half of $228,000 is $114,000. That's what he'll get, assuming the judge doesn't decide he deserves even less based on the circumstances. What about my salary from TechBridge? You're now an employee of a company you don't own. Your employment contract, which we drafted 6 months ago, pays you a salary of $450,000 per year. Any salary you earn after the trust was established is your separate property, not marital property. But didn't I earn millions from TechBridge before the trust was established? Wouldn't Derek argue he's entitled to half of those earnings? That money is gone, Candace explained. It was used to build the company, pay expenses, and make investments, all of which are now held by the trust. We have documentation showing that you reinvested profits into growing the business rather than taking personal distributions. Derek can't claim half of money that was reinvested into company growth before you transferred the company to the trust. Patricia, who had been sitting quietly in the corner of Candace's office, spoke up. Basically, Derek thought he was going to get $200 million. Instead, he'll be lucky to walk away with $100,000. Less than that probably, Candace said. Once we present evidence of his affair and his premeditated plan to divorce Naomi for her money, the judge might decide he doesn't deserve half of anything. Judges don't look kindly on spouses who plan financial ambushes. When will he file? Naomi asked. Based on the timeline in his text messages, probably in the next 3 to 4 months. He wanted to wait until after your 12-year anniversary, which is in February. That gives him a nice round number to present to a judge. Your Honor, I devoted 12 years of my life to this marriage. Naomi felt anger rise in her chest. He devoted 12 years to spending my money and planning to steal more. We'll make sure the judge understands that, Candace assured her. We have documentation of the affair going back 2 years. We have evidence of his consultations with multiple divorce attorneys. We have text messages showing he was planning this divorce specifically to get rich. When Derek files, we'll be ready to show the court exactly what kind of person he is. What do I do now? Naomi asked. You go home and keep acting normal. Don't change anything. Derek needs to continue believing his plan is working. In a few months he'll serve you with divorce papers. When that happens, you call me immediately. We'll respond with our own filing, and that's when we reveal what you've done. He's going to lose his mind, Naomi said. Yes, Candace agreed. He is. Which is why you need to be prepared for his reaction. He might get angry. He might threaten legal action. He might try to claim you defrauded him or hid assets illegally. None of that will work because everything we've done is completely legal, but he'll try anyway. Let him try, Naomi said. I have better attorneys. Patricia stood and walked over to her daughter. You did it, Naomi. You protected everything you built. I'm proud of you. I couldn't have done it without you, Naomi said. You're the trustee. You're the one who legally controls everything now. Temporarily, Patricia said. Once your divorce is final and Derek has no claim on anything, we'll transfer the assets back to you through a new trust that he can never touch. But for now, on paper, I'm one of the wealthiest women in California. They all laughed at that, the tension breaking for a moment. Candace gathered the documents into folders. I'll file all of these with the appropriate agencies. Everything will be on record. If Derek's attorney tries to claim we did something wrong, we can show that every transfer was properly reported and taxed. There's no fraud here, no hiding of assets. Just smart estate planning that happened to occur before a divorce. As Naomi drove home that afternoon, she felt lighter than she had in 8 months. The performance was still ongoing. She still had to pretend with Derek for a few more months. But the hard part was done. Her fortune was protected. She thought about the moment when Derek would finally file for divorce. The moment when he would expect her to break down, to panic, to desperately try to negotiate. The moment when he would think he had won. And then she thought about the moment after that. When Candace would present the trust documents. When Derek would realize that everything he had planned for, everything he had schemed toward, was impossible. When the judge would tell him that he was entitled to half of essentially nothing. That moment was going to be beautiful. Naomi pulled into the driveway of the house in Beverly Hills, the house that Derek thought they owned together, not knowing it belonged to a trust he had never heard of. She walked inside and found Derek in the kitchen making dinner. He smiled when he saw her, that fake warm smile he had been giving her for months. Hey babe. How was work? Good, Naomi said. Really good actually. I'm making pasta, Derek said. Your favorite. He was being extra nice lately. The divorce filing was getting close, so he was ramping up his performance as a caring husband. Every kind gesture was evidence he thought he could use in court. Sounds great, Naomi said. I'm going to change clothes. I'll be down in a few minutes. She went upstairs to their bedroom and closed the door. She stood there for a moment, looking around at the room she had shared with Derek for 12 years. Soon she would never have to see him again. Soon this nightmare would be over. Her phone buzzed. A text from Patricia. Everything's filed. You're protected. I'm proud of you, sweetheart. Naomi typed back, thank you for everything, Mom. I love you. She changed into comfortable clothes, jeans, and a maroon sweater. Then she looked at herself in the mirror, practicing the neutral expression she had perfected over the past 8 months. Just a few more months of pretending. Just a little bit longer. And then Derek would finally pay for what he had done. The divorce papers arrived on a Thursday afternoon in February, 2 days after Naomi and Derek's 12-year wedding anniversary. They had celebrated the anniversary with dinner at an expensive restaurant. Derek had given her diamond earrings, paid for with her money. She had given him a watch, also expensive, also purchased with her money since Derek had no income of his own. He had held her hand across the table and said, 12 years. Here's to 12 more. Naomi had smiled and raised her glass, knowing the lie behind his words. Knowing that he had already drafted divorce papers and was just waiting for the right moment to file them. That moment came 48 hours later. Naomi was in her home office, reviewing quarterly reports from TechBridge Solutions, when the doorbell rang. She answered it to find a process server, A young man in his 20s holding an envelope. Naomi Bennett? Yes. You've been served. He handed her the envelope and left quickly, as if he didn't want to be around for her reaction. Naomi closed the door and looked at the envelope in her hands. Her name was printed on the front in official legal text. Inside would be Derek's petition for divorce, his demands for half of everything she owned, the culmination of his 2-year plan. She opened the envelope carefully and pulled out the documents. The petition was 20 pages long, prepared by Frank Torres, the attorney Derek had been consulting with for over a year. The first page stated the basics. Derek Bennett was filing for divorce from Naomi Bennett after 12 years of marriage. Irreconcilable differences. California Community Property State. He was requesting equitable distribution of all marital assets. Naomi flipped to the asset disclosure section. This was where Derek had listed what he believed they owned together. TechBridge Solutions. Estimated value $400 million. Derek was requesting 50% of the company or equivalent cash payout. Beverly Hills Residence. Estimated value $8 million. Derek was requesting 50% of equity. The list went on. Every property, every investment account, every asset Naomi had built. Derek had done his homework, researching the approximate value of everything. His total demand came to $212 million. He was asking for $212 million. Naomi sat down at her desk and read through the entire petition carefully. Frank Torres had crafted it well. The document painted Derek as a supportive spouse who had sacrificed his own career to support Naomi's success. It claimed that Derek had contributed to the marriage by managing their household, attending company events, and providing emotional support during difficult times. The respondent worked long hours building her business while the petitioner maintained their home and provided the stability necessary for her success. One paragraph read, "Without the petitioner's support and sacrifice, the respondent would not have achieved her current level of wealth." It was brilliant legal writing. It was also complete garbage. Derek had contributed nothing to Naomi's success except spending her money and cheating on her. But on paper, framed correctly by an experienced attorney, it sounded like Derek deserved half of everything. There was more. Derek was requesting spousal support of $50,000 per month. He claimed he had become accustomed to a certain lifestyle during the marriage and deserved to maintain that lifestyle after divorce. Naomi set down the papers and took a deep breath. This was the moment she had been preparing for 8 months. Derek had finally made his move. Now it was time to make hers. She picked up her phone and called Candace Mitchell. "He filed?" Naomi said when Candace answered. "How do you feel?" "Angry. Relieved. Ready to destroy him." "Good. Bring me the papers. We'll file our response tomorrow." Derek came home 3 hours later. Naomi was in the living room, the divorce papers spread out on the coffee table in front of her. He walked in and saw her sitting there, saw the papers, and his expression changed. For a moment he looked almost sorry. Then he composed himself and sat down across from her. "I didn't want you to find out this way," he said quietly. "I wanted to talk to you first, but my attorney said it was better to file properly." Naomi looked at him, this man she had lived with for 12 years. He was 40 years old, still handsome, still charming when he wanted to be. But all she saw now was a liar and a thief. "You want $200 million, she said, her voice flat. "Naomi, I know this is hard to understand, but California law is clear. We've been married 12 years. Anything earned during that time is community property. You think you deserve half of what I built." "I supported you," Derek said, his voice taking on a practiced tone. Naomi recognized it as the same tone from his petition, the words he and Frank Torres had rehearsed. "I was there for you while you worked all those hours. I put my own career on hold to be supportive. That has value." "What career?" Naomi asked. "You haven't worked in 8 years. I've been developing business opportunities. Consulting work. Just because I don't have a traditional job doesn't mean I haven't been working. Show me one client. One contract. $1 you've earned from your consulting work." Derek's jaw tightened. "This isn't about that. This is about the law. We're married, we're getting divorced, and the assets get split. That's how it works." "Is Simone excited about the money?" The name hung in the air like a grenade. Derek's face went pale. "What?" "Simone Rodriguez," Naomi said calmly. "Your girlfriend for the past 2 years. The woman you've been planning this divorce with. Does she know you're asking for $200 million, or does she think it's the full $400 million? Derek stood up quickly. "I don't know what you're talking about." "Yes you do. I know about the affair. I know you've been meeting with divorce attorneys for over a year. I know you've been planning this divorce to get rich. I know everything, Derek." His shock was genuine. For the first time he looked genuinely panicked. "You're crazy. There's no affair. I don't know anyone named Simone." Naomi pulled out her phone and opened the folder of photographs Gerald had provided. She turned the screen toward Derek. The first photo showed him and Simone kissing in a parking lot. The second showed them entering her condo together. The third showed them at a jewelry store looking at rings. "Should I keep going?" Naomi asked. "I have about 300 more of these." Derek sat back down slowly. His mind was visibly racing, trying to figure out how to handle this unexpected development. "When did you find out?" he finally asked. 8 months ago. I found your text messages." 8 months. Derek looked stunned. "You've known for 8 months and said nothing?" "I was waiting to see what you would do. And here we are. You filed for divorce just like you planned. Congratulations on following through." Derek's expression changed. The false sympathy disappeared, replaced by something colder. "Fine. Yes, I've been seeing Simone. Yes, I'm ready to move on from this marriage. But that doesn't change the law. You're still worth hundreds of millions of dollars and I'm still entitled to half." "Are you?" "California is a community property state. That's not debatable." "You're right," Naomi said. "It's not debatable. Community property means you get half of what I own. So let's talk about what I own." She pulled out the asset disclosure form that Candace had prepared, the one Naomi would be filing with her response to Derek's petition. Current assets owned by Naomi Bennett. Checking account with $38,000. Mercedes SUV valued at $90,000. Personal items valued at approximately $100,000. Total net worth, $228,000. Derek grabbed the paper and read it, confusion spreading across his face. "This is wrong. What about TechBridge Solutions? What about the houses? The investment accounts?" "I don't own those anymore," Naomi said simply. "What do you mean you don't own them?" "I transferred them. 8 months ago, right after I discovered your plan, I transferred all my major assets to a family trust. My mother is the trustee. The company, the properties, the investments, all of it belongs to the trust now, not to me." Derek's face went from confused to horrified. "You can't do that. That's fraud. That's hiding assets." "It's not fraud. It's estate planning. Wealthy people do it all the time. Everything was properly appraised, documented, and reported to the IRS. It's completely legal. You did it to avoid giving me half in the divorce." "I did it because it was smart financial planning that I should have done years ago," Naomi corrected. "The fact that it happened before you filed for divorce is just timing." "No judge will allow this," Derek said, his voice rising. "They'll see through it. They'll force you to return the assets." "They won't because it's legal. Candace Mitchell is one of the best family law attorneys in California. She made sure everything was done correctly. You can try to fight it but you'll lose." Derek stood up, pacing now, his hands shaking. "You set me up. You've known about this for 8 months and you set me up." "No," Naomi said coldly. "You set yourself up. You planned to steal from me. You spent 2 years having an affair and scheming to take half of what I built. All I did was protect what's mine. This isn't fair." The words almost made Naomi laugh. "Fair? You think fairness matters to you? You were going to take $200 million from me just for being married to me while I did all the work. How is that fair? I'm your husband. You're a liar and a cheater who saw me as a bank account." Derek's phone buzzed. He pulled it out, looked at the screen, and his expression changed again. "It's Frank. He wants to meet tomorrow to discuss the case." "Good luck with that," Naomi said. "When Frank realizes there's no money to get, I wonder how long he'll keep representing you." Derek looked at her, and for the first time, Naomi saw real fear in his eyes. He was realizing that his plan had failed, that he had wasted 2 years, that he was going to walk away from this marriage with nothing. "We can work this out," he said, his voice changing to something almost pleading. "We don't need to go to court. We can negotiate something reasonable." "No," Naomi said. "We're going to court. And you're going to get exactly what you deserve, which is nothing." She stood up and walked toward the stairs. At the bottom step she turned back. "You have until Monday to move out of this house. It belongs to the family trust, not to me, so you have no legal right to live here." "Where am I supposed to go?" "Call Simone. I'm sure she'll let you move into her condo. After all, you were going to buy her a house with my money. Seems fair that she should support you now." Naomi went upstairs and closed the bedroom door. She heard Derek on the phone downstairs, his voice angry and panicked, probably calling Frank Torres or Simone or both. She sat on the bed and realized her hands were shaking. Not from fear or sadness but from adrenaline and satisfaction. She had done it. She had protected her assets. And now Derek was finally understanding that he had lost. The real fight would happen in court. But Naomi knew she had already won. The depositions took place 2 months after Derek filed for divorce. Frank Torres had tried to delay them, probably hoping to find some angle to attack the family trust. But Candace pushed forward, and the judge agreed that depositions should proceed on schedule. They met in a conference room at a neutral law office in downtown Los Angeles. Naomi wore a green suit, professional and composed. Derek wore a gray suit that she recognized as one she had bought him 2 years ago. He looked terrible. The past 2 months had not been kind to him. He had dark circles under his eyes and he had lost weight. Naomi felt no sympathy. Frank Torres sat next to Derek, a tall man in his 50s with silver hair and an expensive suit. Across the table, Candace sat next to Naomi, her expression calm and confident. A court reporter sat at the end of the table, ready to record every word. Frank began questioning Naomi. His strategy was obvious from the first question. Mrs. Bennett, when did you decide to transfer your assets to the Bennett Family Trust? In March of last year, Naomi answered. And when did you discover your husband was having an affair? In March of last year. The same month. Yes. So you discovered the affair and immediately decided to transfer your assets. Doesn't that suggest you were trying to hide them from your husband? No, Naomi said calmly. It suggests I realized I needed better asset protection. The affair made me think about estate planning in general. If something happened to me, I wanted my assets protected in a trust. That's good financial planning. But the timing is suspicious, isn't it? You find out about the affair, and suddenly you're transferring everything to your mother. Wealthy people transfer assets to family trusts all the time, Naomi replied. It's standard estate planning. The timing was coincidental. Coincidental, Frank repeated skeptically. Mrs. Bennett, you transferred $470 million in assets over an 8-month period, and you expect us to believe it had nothing to do with avoiding community property division? I expect you to believe it was legal, Naomi said. Every transfer was properly documented, appraised, and reported to the appropriate agencies. If you think something was done illegally, show me evidence. Frank shuffled through papers. Let's talk about TechBridge Solutions. You built that company over 15 years, correct? Yes. And during your marriage, the company's value increased from approximately $20 million to over $400 million? Approximately, yes. And your husband supported you during that growth period? Naomi almost laughed. No. My employees supported me. My investors supported me. My mother supported me. Derek did nothing except spend my money. He attended company events with you. So did hundreds of other people. He managed your household while you worked long hours. We had a housekeeper who managed the household. Derek played video games and went to the gym. Frank's jaw tightened. Mrs. Bennett, you seem very hostile toward your husband. I'm realistic about his contributions, which were zero. Your Honor, Frank looked at the court reporter, even though no judge was present at a deposition. I want it noted that the respondent is displaying clear hostility toward the petitioner. Candace smiled. She's answering your questions truthfully, Frank. If the truth sounds hostile, that's not her problem. The questioning continued for 3 hours. Frank tried every angle he could think of to make the asset transfer look suspicious or illegal. But Candace had prepared everything too well. Every question had an answer. Every document was in order. Then it was Candace's turn to question Derek. Mr. Bennett, how long have you been having an affair with Simone Rodriguez? Derek glanced at Frank before answering. About 2 years. And during those 2 years, did you tell your wife about the affair? No. Did you meet with divorce attorneys during that time? I consulted with attorneys, yes. How many attorneys? 3 or 4. Actually, it was 5, Candace said, pulling out a document. 5 different attorneys over a 14-month period. You were shopping for the best strategy to maximize your divorce payout, weren't you? I was getting legal advice. Let me read you something. Candace pulled out transcripts of text messages between Derek and Simone. Gerald's investigation had been thorough. This is a text message you sent to Ms. Rodriguez on January 14th of last year. 1 more year of playing husband, then I'll file and walk away with $175 million. She'll never see it coming. Did you send that message? Derek shifted in his seat. Yes. So you were planning to divorce your wife specifically to get her money? I was planning to divorce my wife because the marriage wasn't working. But the money was important, wasn't it? You specifically mentioned $175 million. California is a community property state. I was entitled to know what I might receive in a divorce. Candace pulled out more documents. These are credit card statements showing charges you made over the past 2 years. $43,000 in gifts, dinners, and hotel rooms with Ms. Rodriguez. All paid for by your wife. Did she know you were spending her money on your girlfriend? No. So you were stealing from her. Those were marital credit cards. I had a right to use them. To fund an affair? Frank interrupted. This is irrelevant to the asset division question. It's very relevant, Candace countered. It goes to Mr. Bennett's character and his motives for filing for divorce. He wasn't filing because the marriage failed. He was filing as part of a calculated plan to get rich. Candace laid out more evidence. Photos of Derek and Simone together. Records of Derek meeting with attorneys while still telling Naomi he loved her. Documented conversations where Derek discussed buying a house and a boat once the divorce was finalized. Mr. Bennett, do you believe you contributed to your wife's success in building TechBridge Solutions? Yes. How? I provided emotional support. I was there for her. Can you give me specific examples? Derek fumbled for an answer. I attended company events. I listened when she talked about work problems. Did you invest any money in the company? No. Did you work for the company? No. Did you provide any business expertise or advice? I'm not a tech person. So you didn't contribute financially, you didn't contribute labor, and you didn't contribute expertise. What exactly did you contribute? I was her husband. And you believe that being married to her while she worked 16-hour days to build a $400 million company entitles you to $200 million? California law says I'm entitled to half of marital assets. Except your wife doesn't have any significant marital assets anymore, does she? Derek's face flushed red. Because she hid them. She didn't hide anything. She engaged in legal estate planning. Everything was properly documented and reported. You just don't like that she was smarter than you. Objection, Frank said. Argumentative. I'll rephrase, Candace said smoothly. Mr. Bennett, you spent 2 years planning to divorce Mrs. Bennett for money, correct? I planned to divorce her, yes. And in all that planning, did you ever consider that she might protect her assets? Derek didn't answer. Did you think she would just let you take half of everything she built? Still no answer. Mr. Bennett, answer the question. I thought California law would protect me, Derek finally said. You thought the law would let you steal from your wife. It's not stealing. It's community property. You contributed nothing to that property. I was her husband. Being someone's husband doesn't entitle you to their money, Mr. Bennett. Especially when you were cheating on them and planning to leave them. The deposition ended an hour later. Derek looked defeated. Frank Torres looked frustrated. Naomi felt nothing but cold satisfaction. Outside the office building, Derek tried to approach her, but Candace stepped between them. No contact with my client, Mr. Bennett. Naomi, please, Derek said. We can still work this out. We don't need to destroy each other in court. You tried to destroy me, Naomi said. I just defended myself. I'll fight this. I'll prove you hid assets illegally. I'll get what I deserve. You'll get exactly what you deserve, Naomi agreed. Nothing. She walked to her car, Candace beside her. How do you think it went? Naomi asked once they were alone. Perfectly, Candace said. Frank has nothing. Derek has no case. All that's left is the trial, and that's just a formality. The judge will review the evidence and rule in your favor. When's the trial? 3 months. June 15th. 3 more months, Naomi thought. 3 more months and this nightmare would be over. She drove home to the house in Beverly Hills, which felt emptier and cleaner now that Derek was gone. He had moved into Simone's condo after Naomi kicked him out. She wondered if they were happy together, now that their plan had failed and there was no money to live on. She wondered if Simone still wanted to be with Derek when he couldn't buy her expensive gifts or take her on luxury vacations. She didn't wonder long. Gerald had reported that Derek and Simone were already fighting constantly, their relationship falling apart now that the fantasy of wealth was gone. Naomi poured herself a glass of wine and stood on her balcony, looking out at the Los Angeles skyline. In 3 months she would be free. Free of Derek, free of the lies, free to move forward with her life. And Derek would have nothing except the knowledge that he had tried to steal from the wrong woman. The trial began on June 15th, exactly 4 months after Derek had filed for divorce. The courtroom was on the 3rd floor of the Los Angeles County Superior Court building, a wood-paneled room with high ceilings and harsh fluorescent lighting. Judge Raymond Cooper presided, a stern-looking man in his early 60s with gray hair and reading glasses perched on his nose. He had a reputation for fairness but no tolerance for games or deception. Naomi sat at the respondents' table with Candace Mitchell. She wore a maroon dress suit, professional and confident. Her natural hair was styled neatly, and she wore minimal jewelry. Across the aisle, Derek sat with Frank Torres. Derek wore a blue suit and looked nervous. His eyes kept darting toward Naomi, but she refused to look at him. Behind them, the gallery was mostly empty. A few journalists were present, as the case had attracted media attention due to the amounts involved. Patricia sat in the front row behind Naomi, offering silent support. And in the back row, Naomi noticed, sat Simone Rodriguez. She wore a red dress that seemed too bold for a courtroom. She looked uncomfortable, as if she wanted to be anywhere else. Judge Cooper called the court to order. We're here today for the dissolution of marriage between Derek Bennett and Naomi Bennett. Mr. Torres, you may present your opening statement. Frank Torres stood, buttoning his suit jacket. He was a confident speaker, which made sense given his reputation. Your Honor, this case is about fundamental fairness under California community property law. My client, Derek Bennett, was married to Naomi Bennett for 12 years. During that marriage, Mrs. Bennett built a very successful company. My client supported her throughout that process, attending company events, managing their household, and providing emotional support necessary for her success. When the marriage broke down, Mr. Bennett filed for divorce and requested his fair share of the marital estate. However, Mrs. Bennett has attempted to circumvent community property law by transferring virtually all of her assets to a family trust, leaving nothing for equitable division. We believe these transfers were made specifically to defraud my client of his legal rights, and we're asking this court to void those transfers and order proper division of the marital estate. Frank sat down. Candace stood up. Your Honor, this case is actually quite simple. Mrs. Bennett engaged in completely legal estate planning. She transferred assets to a family trust, which is standard practice for anyone with significant wealth. Every transfer was properly documented, appraised, and reported to the IRS. There was no fraud, no hiding of assets, and no violation of community property law. The real issue here is that Mr. Bennett was planning to divorce Mrs. Bennett specifically to get rich. He had an affair for 2 years while plotting to take half of what his wife built through her own hard work. Mrs. Bennett simply protected herself from a predatory spouse. That's not illegal. That's smart. Candace sat down. Judge Cooper looked at both attorneys. Let me make something clear from the start. I don't care about emotions, I don't care about who wronged whom in the marriage. I care about the law. Mr. Torres, if you're going to argue that these asset transfers were fraudulent, you need to provide legal grounds. Ms. Mitchell, if you're going to defend them, you need to show they were done properly. Is that understood? Both attorneys nodded. Good. Mr. Torres, call your first witness. Frank called Derek to the stand. Under questioning, Derek told his version of the story. He described himself as a supportive husband who had sacrificed his career to help Naomi succeed. He talked about attending company events, entertaining clients, and being there for Naomi during stressful times. I believed we were building a life together, Derek said, his voice practiced and emotional. I thought we were partners. Then she suddenly transferred everything away and I realized I had been used. It was a good performance. If Naomi hadn't known the truth, she might have felt sorry for him. Candace's cross-examination destroyed the illusion. Mr. Bennett, you say you sacrificed your career to support your wife. What career was that? I was working in fitness consulting. For which companies? Various companies. Can you name one? Derek hesitated. It was mostly freelance work. How much money did you earn from this freelance work during your marriage? I don't have exact figures. Was it more than $10,000 per year? I'm not sure. Was it more than $1,000 per year? Silence. Mr. Bennett, the truth is you haven't earned any money at all in the past 8 years, correct? I was focusing on supporting Naomi's career. By going to the gym and having an affair? Objection, Frank said. Relevance. Sustained, Judge Cooper said. Ms. Mitchell, stick to financial matters. Of course, Your Honor. Mr. Bennett, how much did you spend on your girlfriend, Simone Rodriguez, during the 2 years you were having an affair? Derek shifted uncomfortably. I don't know. According to credit card records, you spent $43,000. All charged to accounts paid by Mrs. Bennett. Were you using your wife's money to fund your affair? Those were joint accounts. Did Mrs. Bennett know you were spending her money on another woman? No. So you were stealing from her. It was community property. Community property doesn't give you the right to commit fraud, Mr. Bennett. Let me ask you something else. When did you first consult with a divorce attorney? About a year before I filed. Actually, it was 14 months. And you consulted with 5 different attorneys, correct? I wanted legal advice. You were shopping for an attorney who would tell you how to get the most money out of the divorce. I wanted to understand my rights. Candace pulled out the text message transcripts. Let me read something you sent to Ms. Rodriguez. 1 more year of playing husband, then I'll file and walk away with $175 million. That's not understanding your rights, Mr. Bennett. That's planning a robbery. The courtroom was silent. Judge Cooper was making notes. No further questions, Candace said. Frank tried to rehabilitate Derek on redirect, but the damage was done. Derek's claim of being a supportive spouse looked hollow when weighed against evidence of his affair and his calculated plan to get rich. The rest of the trial followed a similar pattern. Frank tried to attack the family trust, calling it a fraudulent transfer. Candace provided documentation showing every transfer was legal and properly reported. Frank brought in a forensic accountant who tried to argue the transfers were suspicious. Candace brought in an estate planning expert who testified that wealthy families transfer assets to trusts all the time for perfectly legitimate reasons. On day 3 of the trial, Candace called Patricia Bennett to the stand. Patricia wore a blue suit and looked composed. She testified that she was the trustee of the Bennett Family Trust, that she controlled all the assets held by the trust, and that the trust had been established for legitimate estate planning purposes. Mrs. Bennett, did you have any involvement in the decision to create this trust? Candace asked. Yes. I've been advising my daughter to set up better asset protection for years. When she finally agreed to do it, I was pleased. Why do you think she finally agreed? I think discovering that her husband was having an affair and planning to divorce her made her realize she needed to protect what she had built. Frank objected. Speculation. Sustained. But the point was made. Patricia's testimony established that the trust was a legitimate family planning tool, not a fraud scheme. On day 4, Judge Cooper called both attorneys to his bench. I've heard enough, he said. I'm ready to rule. We'll reconvene tomorrow morning for my decision. That night, Naomi couldn't sleep. She paced her house, reviewing everything in her mind. They had presented a solid case. The trust was legal. The transfers were documented. But judges could be unpredictable. What if Judge Cooper decided the timing was too suspicious? What if he voided the transfers? What if Derek actually got his money? Candace had assured her that wouldn't happen, but Naomi had learned not to count on anything until it was final. The next morning, the courtroom was packed. Word had spread that Judge Cooper was issuing his ruling, and journalists filled the gallery. Simone was there again, sitting in the back row looking worried. Judge Cooper entered and everyone stood. He sat down and opened a folder on his desk. I'm going to cut right to the issue at hand, he began. Mr. Bennett is requesting that I void asset transfers made by Mrs. Bennett to a family trust, on the grounds that those transfers were fraudulent and designed to avoid community property division. I've reviewed all the evidence presented. I've examined the trust documents, the transfer records, the appraisals, and the tax filings. And I've reached a conclusion. The courtroom was silent. Naomi held her breath. The transfers were completely legal. Relief flooded through Naomi's body. Mrs. Bennett engaged in legitimate estate planning. Every transfer was properly documented and reported. The fact that the transfers occurred after she discovered her husband's affair does not make them fraudulent. People are allowed to protect their assets, especially when they have reason to believe those assets might be at risk. Furthermore, I find that Mr. Bennett's conduct during this marriage was reprehensible. He had an affair, spent marital funds on his mistress, and planned his divorce specifically to maximize financial gain. The evidence clearly shows that Mr. Bennett saw his wife as a source of income rather than a partner. California community property law exists to protect spouses who contribute to a marriage. It does not exist to reward spouses who exploit their partners. Mr. Bennett contributed nothing to his wife's success except perhaps being absent while she worked. Judge Cooper looked directly at Derek. Mr. Bennett, you are not entitled to anything beyond half of the minimal assets Mrs. Bennett currently owns in her personal name. I'm awarding you $57,000, which represents half of her personal checking account and half the value of personal property. That's it. Derek's face went white. Frank Torres looked stunned. As for TechBridge Solutions, the properties and the investments held by the Bennett Family Trust, those are not marital assets subject to division. They belong to the trust and Mr. Bennett has no claim to them. This divorce is granted. The marriage between Derek Bennett and Naomi Bennett is dissolved. Each party will pay their own legal fees. This court is adjourned. Judge Cooper stood and left the courtroom. For a moment, no one moved. Then Derek exploded. This is garbage. You can't do this. That money is mine. Bailiffs moved toward him, but Frank grabbed Derek's arm and pulled him back down. Don't, Frank warned. You'll be held in contempt. Naomi sat perfectly still, absorbing the reality of what had just happened. She had won. Completely and totally won. Derek would get $57,000. After spending hundreds of thousands on legal fees trying to get millions, he would walk away with less than he had spent fighting for it. Candace leaned over and whispered, "Congratulations." Naomi stood and walked out of the courtroom. Journalists tried to ask her questions, but she ignored them. Patricia met her in the hallway and pulled her into a hug. "You did it, baby. You beat him." Behind them, Derek emerged from the courtroom. He looked destroyed, broken. Simone rushed up to him, but Derek pushed past her without a word. Naomi watched him go. She felt no victory, no joy. Just a profound sense of relief that it was over. She had protected what was hers. She had beaten someone who tried to steal from her. And now she was free to move forward. Derek Bennett would fade into her past, a cautionary tale about trusting the wrong person. But Naomi Bennett would keep building, keep growing, keep succeeding. Because that's what winners did. 3 days after the trial ended, Naomi sat in Candace Mitchell's office, signing the final divorce paperwork. Judge Cooper's ruling had been entered into the record. The marriage was officially dissolved. Derek would receive his $57,000, and Naomi would never have to see him again. "How do you feel?" Candace asked as Naomi signed the last page. "Tired," Naomi admitted. "Relieved. And angry that I wasted 12 years on someone who saw me as a paycheck." "Don't think of it as wasted years," Candace said. "Think of it as a learning experience. You'll never make the same mistake again." "No," Naomi agreed. "I won't." Candace handed her copies of all the final documents. "The money will be transferred to Derek's account within 48 hours. After that, you're done with him. Unless he tries to appeal, which I don't think he will." "Why not?" "Because he has no grounds." Judge Cooper's ruling was clear and based on solid legal precedent. Any appeal would be a waste of money, and Derek doesn't have money to waste anymore. Naomi thought about that. Derek had spent over $200,000 on legal fees trying to get $200 million. He had ended up with $57,000, meaning he was in the hole by almost $150,000. And his relationship with Simone had reportedly fallen apart. According to Gerald, who Naomi had kept on retainer just to monitor the situation, Derek and Simone had broken up 2 weeks after the trial. Simone had apparently been furious that there was no money coming, and Derek had been depressed and angry. They had both lost. Neither of them had gotten what they wanted. Naomi, on the other hand, had everything. "What about the trust?" Naomi asked. "When can we transfer the assets back to me?" "We can start that process now," Candace said. "I'd recommend setting up a new trust structure, one that's specifically designed to protect your assets from any future romantic relationships. A revocable trust that converts to irrevocable under certain conditions. It will give you control while keeping the assets protected." "Do it," Naomi said. "I don't ever want to go through this again." "You won't. You're much smarter now about how to protect yourself." Naomi left Candace's office and drove to her mother's house in Pasadena. Patricia was in the garden, tending to her roses. She looked up when Naomi arrived and smiled. "It's over?" "It's over," Naomi confirmed. They went inside and Patricia made tea. They sat at the kitchen table, the same table where they had planned the trust strategy 18 months earlier. "I'm proud of you," Patricia said. "You stayed strong through a terrible situation and you won. I couldn't have done it without you. You made the trust possible. I just held the assets temporarily. You're the one who built everything worth holding." They drank their tea in comfortable silence. Then Patricia said, "What are you going to do now?" "Focus on TechBridge," Naomi replied. "We have 3 new products launching this year. I want to expand into international markets. Maybe open offices in London and Tokyo." "What about personally? Are you going to date again?" Naomi thought about that. The idea of trusting someone new, of letting someone into her life, felt impossible right now. Derek had burned her too badly. Not for a while, she said. I need time to heal. To figure out who I am outside of being someone's wife. That's smart. Don't rush into anything. I won't. And if I do eventually date again, I'll have an ironclad prenup. Patricia laughed. Good plan. Over the next few weeks, Naomi threw herself into work. TechBridge Solutions had been doing well during the divorce proceedings, but now she could focus completely on the company without the distraction of Derek and the legal battle. She promoted 2 senior employees to new leadership positions. She approved funding for a research and development project that had been on hold. She traveled to New York to meet with potential investors about expanding the company. And slowly she started to feel like herself again. The woman who had built a $350 million company from nothing. The woman who had overcome every obstacle in her path. The woman who refused to be defeated. 6 months after the divorce was finalized, Naomi attended a technology conference in San Francisco. She was the keynote speaker, giving a talk about resilience and entrepreneurship. She stood on stage in front of 800 people, wearing a bright blue dress, and told her story. Not the story of Derek and the divorce. That was private. But the story of building TechBridge, of facing rejection and doubt and coming back stronger each time. People will underestimate you, she said to the audience. They'll tell you your ideas won't work. They'll try to take credit for your success or steal what you've built. But if you stay focused on your goals, if you protect what matters, if you refuse to let anyone diminish your worth, you will win. The audience applauded. After her speech, dozens of people came up to talk to her, to ask for advice, to tell her how much her story had inspired them. One young woman, probably in her mid-20s, said, I'm about to launch my first startup. I'm terrified I'll fail. You probably will fail sometimes, Naomi told her honestly. I've failed plenty. But failure isn't the end. It's just information. Learn from it and keep going. Did you ever want to quit? Every week for the first 5 years, Naomi said with a smile. But I didn't. And now I have something I'm proud of. That evening, Naomi had dinner with some colleagues from the conference. They talked about technology trends, investment opportunities, and industry gossip. No one mentioned her divorce. Most people in her professional world didn't even know about it. That's how she wanted it. The divorce was part of her past, not her identity. After dinner, Naomi walked along the San Francisco waterfront, enjoying the cool evening air. Her phone buzzed with a text from Patricia. How's the conference? Good. Gave my keynote speech today. It went well. I'm proud of you, sweetheart. Thanks, Mom. I love you. Love you too. Naomi put her phone away and looked out at the bay. The lights of the city reflected on the water, and she felt a sense of peace she hadn't felt in years. Derek was gone. The legal battle was over. The assets were protected and slowly being transferred back into her name through the new trust structure Candace had created. And most importantly, Naomi had learned that she was stronger than she had realized. She had faced betrayal and scheming and had come out on top. Not because she was ruthless or cruel, but because she was smart and prepared and refused to be a victim. She thought about Derek sometimes, wondering where he was and what he was doing. Gerald had reported that Derek had moved back in with his parents, unable to afford his own place after spending all his money on the divorce. Simone had moved on to a new boyfriend, a wealthy businessman who could give her the lifestyle she wanted. They had both thought they were playing Naomi, and they had both lost everything. Naomi didn't feel sorry for them. They had made their choices and they had to live with the consequences. She, on the other hand, would keep building, keep growing, keep succeeding. Because that's what Naomi Bennett did. She won. 1 year after the divorce was finalized, Naomi Bennett stood in her office on the top floor of the TechBridge Solutions headquarters building. Floor-to-ceiling windows offered a panoramic view of Los Angeles, the city where she had built her empire. The company had grown significantly in the past year. Revenue was up 40%. They had opened offices in London and Singapore. 2 of their products had won industry awards. And Naomi had just been named one of the top 50 most influential women in technology by a major business magazine. She was 40 years old, single, and worth over $600 million. The company's value had continued to climb, and the new trust structure Candace had created meant every dollar was protected. Her assistant, Jennifer, knocked on the door. Miss Bennett? Your 2 o'clock is here. Thanks, Jennifer. Send them in. 3 young women entered, all in their 20s, all looking nervous and excited. They were the founders of a startup that Naomi was considering investing in. They had developed new software for healthcare management, and their pitch had impressed her enough to grant them a meeting. For the next hour, Naomi listened to their presentation, asked tough questions and evaluated their business plan. She saw echoes of her younger self in them. The determination, the passion, the belief that they could change their industry. At the end of the meeting she said, "I'll invest $500,000 for 10% equity. My legal team will send over the paperwork." The three women looked stunned, then thrilled. They thanked her profusely and left with promises to make her proud of the investment. After they were gone, Naomi smiled. She had started actively investing in female-founded companies, using her wealth to help other women build their dreams. It felt good, meaningful in a way that just accumulating more money never had. Her phone buzzed. A text from Patricia. "Dinner tonight? I'm making your favorite. I'll be there at 7. That evening, Naomi drove to Pasadena, this time not for legal strategy or crisis management, but just for dinner with her mother. They ate at the kitchen table and Patricia caught her up on neighborhood gossip and her own activities. She had joined a book club and was planning a trip to Ghana in the fall. "You seem happy," Patricia observed. "Happier than I've seen you in years." "I am happy," Naomi agreed. "I feel like I finally got my life back." "Have you thought about dating?" "A little. But I'm not rushing into anything. I like being on my own right now. Focusing on work, on myself, on what I want." "That's healthy. But don't close yourself off completely. Not everyone is like Derek." "I know. But I'm okay being single for now. Maybe someday I'll meet someone who actually values me for who I am, not what I have. Until then, I'm content." They finished dinner and moved to the living room for coffee. Patricia pulled out some old photo albums, and they spent an hour looking at pictures of Naomi as a child, as a teenager starting her first business ventures, as a young woman launching TechBridge. "You've always been determined," Patricia said, pointing at a photo of 15-year-old Naomi at a science fair. "Even then you knew what you wanted." "I get it from you," Naomi said. "Maybe. But you took it further than I ever did. You built something amazing." 3 months later, TechBridge Solutions announced its biggest partnership yet. A collaboration with a major international corporation that would bring their software to markets across Europe and Asia. The deal was worth $200 million over 5 years. Naomi held a press conference to announce the partnership. Journalists asked questions about the deal, about her vision for the company's future, about what it was like being one of the few black women leading a company of this size. One journalist asked, "Ms. Bennett, you've been through some personal challenges in the past couple of years. How has that affected your approach to business?" Naomi considered the question carefully. She rarely talked about the divorce publicly, but the question deserved an honest answer. "I've learned that protecting what you build is just as important as building it in the first place," she said. "Success attracts people who want to take from you rather than build with you. You have to be smart about who you trust and how you structure your life and your business." "Do you have any advice for other women entrepreneurs?" "Yes. Protect your assets. Have good lawyers. Trust your instincts when something feels wrong. And never let anyone make you feel guilty for being successful or for defending what's yours." The press conference ended and Naomi returned to her office. She had 3 more meetings that afternoon, then a dinner with potential investors that evening. Her life was full, busy, and exactly what she wanted it to be. That weekend, Naomi hosted a party at her house in Beverly Hills to celebrate the new partnership. The house that had once felt tainted by Derek's presence now felt completely hers. She had redecorated, changing the colors and furniture, making it a space that reflected her taste rather than some compromise between her and a lying husband. 50 guests filled the house and spilled out onto the patio by the pool. Employees from TechBridge, business associates, friends, family. Patricia was there, of course, holding court with stories about Naomi's childhood. At one point in the evening, Naomi stood on the patio in her green dress, holding a glass of wine, watching her guests mingle and enjoy themselves. She felt profoundly grateful. Not just for her success but for surviving the betrayal and coming out stronger. A woman approached her, someone she didn't recognize. "Miss Bennett? I'm Rachel Kim. I'm a reporter with Tech Business Magazine. I was hoping I could get a few minutes for an interview about your success story." "How did you get into my party?" Naomi asked, amused rather than annoyed. "I'm friends with one of your employees. She brought me as her +1. I'm sorry if that was inappropriate, but I've been trying to get an interview with you for months, and your assistant keeps saying you're too busy." Naomi laughed. "That's resourceful. Okay, Rachel. You've got 5 minutes." They sat down at a quiet corner of the patio. Rachel pulled out her phone to record the conversation. What's the secret to your success? Rachel asked. There's no secret. Just hard work, smart decisions, and refusing to give up when things get difficult. You faced a major personal challenge recently. Your divorce. Yes. And your ex-husband tried to take half your fortune. He tried. He failed. How did you stop him? Naomi smiled. I was smarter than he was. I protected my assets legally. And I didn't let emotion cloud my judgment. Some people might say what you did was unfair. That he was entitled to community property under California law. Some people are wrong. My ex-husband contributed nothing to my success except spending my money. He had an affair, planned the divorce to get rich, and thought I would just hand over half of everything I built. That's not how life works. What would you say to other women in similar situations? Protect yourself. Don't assume your partner has your best interests at heart. Have good lawyers, smart financial planning, and the courage to walk away from people who are using you. Rachel asked a few more questions, then thanked Naomi and left. Naomi returned to her guests, feeling satisfied that she had told her story on her own terms. The party continued until midnight. When everyone had left and the caterers had cleaned up, Naomi stood alone in her house, looking around at everything she had protected and reclaimed. This was her life, her success, her future. Derek had tried to steal it and he had failed. Naomi had won not just in the courtroom but in every way that mattered. She had kept her company, her assets, and most importantly, her self-respect. She went to bed that night in her beautiful house, successful and free, and slept better than she had in years. The next morning, Naomi woke up early and went for a run along the beach in Santa Monica. The sun was just rising, painting the sky orange and pink. The ocean stretched out endlessly before her. She thought about her journey. 15 years of building a company. 12 years of marriage to the wrong person. 18 months of legal strategy and performance. And now, finally, the freedom to focus completely on what mattered. She had learned hard lessons. About trust, about protection, about the importance of staying one step ahead of people who wanted to take from you. But she had also learned that she was stronger than she had known. That she could survive betrayal and come back even more successful. That no one could break her unless she let them. Her phone buzzed with a message from Jennifer. Just saw the interview with Tech Business Magazine. You're getting great press. Also, 3 more startups have requested meetings about potential investment. Naomi smiled and texted back. Schedule them. I'm always interested in supporting good ideas. She finished her run and drove back home, showered, dressed in a red suit, and headed to the office. TechBridge Solutions was launching a new product next month, and there was work to be done. Meetings to attend, decisions to make, a company to run. Naomi Bennett was 40 years old, at the top of her field, and building toward an even bigger future. Derek was irrelevant now, a footnote in her history. A mistake she had learned from and moved past. Anne Simone, the mistress who had thought she would be rich by helping Derek steal from his wife, was also irrelevant. Just another person who had underestimated Naomi Bennett and paid the price. As Naomi sat at her desk that morning, reviewing quarterly projections and planning the next phase of company growth, she realized something important. She didn't need revenge anymore. She had already won. Derek's life had fallen apart. He had lost his wife, his girlfriend, his dreams of wealth, and his self-respect. He would spend years rebuilding from nothing while watching Naomi continue to thrive. That was better than any revenge she could have planned. Because the best revenge wasn't about hurting him. It was about succeeding so completely that he became irrelevant. Naomi Bennett had built an empire. She had protected it from thieves. And now she was going to take it even higher. That was the story she wanted to tell. Not about betrayal and divorce, but about resilience and triumph. She was free. She was powerful. She was successful. And her future was limitless.